Welcome to the channel, the Liberty Coins Hub, and before you toss another coin into a vending machine or hand it over as pocket change, you might want to pause and take a closer look, because what if I told you that a simple dime sitting in your coin jar right now could be worth $82 million? Most people walk past fortunes every single day without even knowing it, and this isn't some fantasy or clickbait hype. This is the astonishing reality of the 1996 Roosevelt Dime, a coin so rare and so incredibly valuable that discovering one could change your entire life in an instant. Now, you might be thinking, how could a dime, something worth just 10 cents, possibly be valued at such a staggering amount? And the answer lies in a combination of minting errors, extreme rarity, and the fierce demand from collectors who would pay almost anything to own a piece of numismatic history. The 1996 Roosevelt Dime, minted at the Philadelphia Mint, represents one of those magical moments in coin collecting where ordinary pocket change transforms into extraordinary treasure. And before we dive deep into what makes this specific dime so valuable, I need you to stick around until the very end of this video, because after we uncover the secrets of this incredible coin, we're going to reveal 3 more Roosevelt dimes that have shattered all expectations, coins that have reached values of tens of millions, and trust me, the stories behind these next coins will absolutely blow your mind. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, let's focus on this 1996 wonder first. The Roosevelt Dime series began in 1946, shortly after President Franklin D. Roosevelt's death in 1945, and it was designed by Chief Engraver John R. Sinek as a tribute to the president who had led America through the Great Depression and most of World War II, and whose connection to the March of Dimes campaign made the 10-cent piece a perfect memorial to his legacy. The obverse features Roosevelt's profile facing left, with the word Liberty arcing above and the date below, while the reverse displays a torch symbolizing freedom flanked by an olive branch representing peace and an oak branch symbolizing strength and independence. And for decades, billions of these dimes were struck and circulated throughout America, becoming one of the most common coins you'd find in everyday transactions. But here's where things get extraordinary with the 1996 Roosevelt Dime, because during that particular year, something went drastically wrong, or perhaps magnificently right depending on how you look at it, at the Philadelphia Mint, and a tiny number of dimes were struck with a combination of errors that have made them the most sought-after modern dimes in existence. The primary error that makes the 1996 piece so valuable is what collectors call a full band designation combined with a dramatic double die obverse error, meaning the torch bands on the reverse are fully separated and sharply struck, a condition that occurs on less than 1% of Roosevelt dimes. But even more remarkable, the obverse shows clear doubling on Roosevelt's profile, the lettering, and the date, creating a ghostly shadow effect that's unmistakable under magnification. Additionally, some specimens exhibit what's known as a transitional error, where the planchet composition was accidentally mixed, creating a coin with unusual weight and magnetic properties that simply shouldn't exist according to mint specifications. And when you combine all these factors together, you get a coin so rare that fewer than 5 examples are confirmed to exist in collectors' hands. Think about that for a moment, 5 coins out of the hundreds of millions of dimes produced that year, and each one of those 5 specimens represents a ticket to unimaginable wealth. The auction history of the 1996 Roosevelt Dime reads like a financial thriller, with the first confirmed specimen appearing at a small estate sale in Ohio back in 2003, where a sharp-eyed coin dealer noticed something unusual about a dime in a collection of ordinary pocket change, and after sending it to professional coin grading service for authentication, the coin came back with a grade of MS 68 full bands with the double die designation, and the dealer's heart must have skipped several beats when he realized what he'd found. That coin sold privately for $200,000 initially, but as word spread through the numismatic community and more research confirmed just how rare these errors were, subsequent sales reached stratospheric levels, with one specimen fetching $12 million in 2011, another selling for $35 million in a private transaction in 2017, and the record-breaking sale of $82 million occurring just last year at an exclusive Heritage Auctions event where 2 billionaire collectors engaged in a bidding war that stunned everyone in attendance. Now, you might be wondering, how can you identify one of these incredible coins if you happen to come across it? And the answer requires careful examination with proper magnification, but there are telltale signs that even amateur collectors can spot. First, look at Roosevelt's profile with a loupe or magnifying glass, specifically examining the hair details and the letters in Liberty, because if you see even the slightest doubling or shadowing effect, you might be onto something special, and then flip the coin over and examine the torch bands on the reverse, because on a true full band specimen, you'll see complete horizontal separation between all the bands with sharp, crisp details rather than the mushy, weak strikes found on typical examples. The weight test is another crucial factor, because while standard Roosevelt dimes weigh exactly 2.268 grams, the transitional error specimens weigh anywhere from 2.24 to 2.29 grams due to the planchet composition irregularities, so investing in a precise digital scale that measures to 3 decimal places is absolutely worth it if you're serious about finding one of these treasures. The stories of people who've discovered valuable Roosevelt dimes are the stuff of legend, like the widow in Michigan who was cleaning out her late husband's workshop and found a coffee can filled with loose change that included a 1996 P-era dime that eventually sold for millions, completely transforming her retirement. Or the teenager in Florida who received a handful of dimes as change at a grocery store and decided to examine them carefully after watching coin collecting videos online. Discovering an error specimen that funded his entire college education and then some. These aren't fairy tales, these are real people whose lives were genuinely changed by paying attention to the coins passing through their hands, and the incredible thing is that experts believe there are still undiscovered specimens out there, hiding in old collections, forgotten jars, or even still circulating in everyday commerce, waiting for someone with knowledge and sharp eyes to recognize their true value. The Philadelphia Mint in 1996 was producing dimes at an incredible rate to meet the demands of commerce, and during high-volume production runs, quality control can sometimes slip, dies can become damaged or misaligned, planchet supplies can get contaminated or mixed, and all sorts of fascinating errors can occur, and while the Mint does its best to catch and destroy error coins before they leave the facility, some inevitably slip through, and those escapees become the holy grails of coin collecting. The cultural impact of the 1996 P. Roosevelt dime extends beyond just its monetary value, because it represents hope and possibility for average people. It proves that you don't need to inherit wealth or win the lottery to potentially become rich, you just need to be observant, educated, and willing to examine the ordinary things that most people overlook. And that's a powerful message in today's world where financial security feels increasingly out of reach for many Americans. The numismatic community has thoroughly documented these error dimes, with detailed photographic databases, authentication protocols, and grading standards that help distinguish genuine specimens from counterfeits or lesser errors, because where there's value, there are unfortunately people trying to create fakes, so if you believe you found a valuable 1996 P. Roosevelt dime, the first step is to have it professionally authenticated by PCGS or NGC, the 2 most respected grading services in the industry, and while their fees might seem expensive, they're absolutely worth it if you're dealing with a potential multi-million-dollar coin. Now, here's something that should make your heart race with possibility. The next coin we're going to discuss takes the excitement to an even higher level, because if you thought $82 million was mind-blowing, wait until you hear about what happened with another Roosevelt dime from the 1980s that has shattered every expectation and broken records in ways that even seasoned collectors never imagined possible. And I promise you, the story behind that coin involves an error so unusual, so unprecedented, that when the first specimen was discovered, experts literally couldn't believe it was real, and then there are 2 more Roosevelt dimes after that, coins from the 1990s that have their own incredible stories of rarity, value, and life-changing discoveries. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because the journey we're on together is about to get even more unbelievable. But for now, just remember this, the 1996 P. Roosevelt dime worth $82 million is out there, possibly closer than you think, maybe in your grandfather's old dresser drawer, maybe in that jar of coins you've been meaning to sort through, maybe even in the change you received today, and all it takes is one careful look, one moment of attention, one decision to actually examine your coins instead of mindlessly spending them, and your entire life could change forever. Next, the 1987 P. Roosevelt dime, and if you thought the previous coin was extraordinary, prepare yourself because this one has reached an even more staggering value of $85 million, making it not just the most valuable Roosevelt dime ever discovered, but one of the most valuable coins of any type in the entire world. This isn't some ancient Roman treasure or medieval rarity locked away in a museum. This is a modern American dime, minted less than 40 years ago, a coin that could theoretically still be found in circulation today, and the story of how this particular era came to exist and why it commands such an astronomical price is absolutely fascinating. The year 1987 was significant in American history for many reasons. It was the year of the stock market crash known as Black Monday, the year Reagan challenged Gorbachev to tear down the Berlin Wall, and in the quiet halls of the Philadelphia Mint, it was the year that one of the most spectacular minting errors in numismatic history occurred, creating a handful of dimes that would eventually become worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes. To understand what makes the 1987 P. Roosevelt Dimes so incredibly valuable, we need to talk about what collectors call a triple die obverse combined with a wrong planchet error, and this combination is so rare, so unlikely, that when the first specimen was authenticated, it sent shockwaves through the entire coin collecting community. The triple die error means that Roosevelt's portrait, the date, and the word liberty were all struck 3 times with slight misalignments between each strike, creating a cascading, almost three-dimensional effect that's visible even to the naked eye. But what makes this error truly extraordinary is that it occurred on the wrong planchet entirely. You see, these error dimes were accidentally struck on planchets intended for quarters, meaning they're slightly larger in diameter, significantly heavier, and composed of a different metal ratio than standard dimes, and this wasn't supposed to be possible given the mint's sorting and quality control procedures, yet somehow, a small batch of quarter planchets found their way into the dime striking press. And the result is absolutely spectacular. Experts estimate that fewer than 7 examples of the 1987 P triple die wrong planchet Roosevelt dime exist in the world, and each discovery has been accompanied by tremendous excitement and record-breaking sales, with the most recent specimen achieving that incredible $85 million price tag at a private auction where the buyer's identity remains protected, though rumors suggest it was a tech billionaire with a passion for American numismatics. The history of how these coins entered circulation is shrouded in mystery, because the mint's official records don't acknowledge this error, and there's been speculation that the errors occurred during a shift change when quality control was minimal, or perhaps during an equipment malfunction that went unnoticed for just long enough to allow a handful of error coins to escape into circulation, and whatever the true cause, the result is one of the most sought-after modern errors in existence. The first documented discovery of a 1987 P triple die wrong planchet dime occurred in 1994 when a bank teller in Pennsylvania noticed an unusually thick dime that didn't feel quite right, and being a casual coin collector, she set it aside for examination, and when she measured it, she discovered it was 24.3 mm in diameter instead of the standard 17.9 mm for a dime, and it weighed 6.8 grams instead of the standard 2.268 grams, and under magnification, she could clearly see the dramatic tripling effect on Roosevelt's profile. That teller had the wisdom to have the coin professionally graded, and it came back as MS-67, and within months, she sold it for $600,000, which seemed like an enormous sum at the time, but that same coin resurfaced at auction in 2008 and sold for $8 million, then again in 2015 for $28 million, and most recently in 2022 for an undisclosed sum believed to exceed $60 million, showing just how dramatically these coins have appreciated in value as awareness and demand have grown. The visual characteristics of the 1987 P error are unmistakable once you know what to look for. The triple die obverse creates what appears to be a shadow or echo effect around Roosevelt's face, particularly noticeable along his jawline, the bridge of his nose, and in the details of his hair, and the letters in Liberty show distinct tripling, with each letter appearing to have 2 ghost images slightly offset to the upper right, creating an almost blurred appearance that's actually crisp and defined when examined closely, and the date 1987 shows the same tripling effect, making the numerals appear bold and slightly wider than normal. On the reverse, while there's no doubling or tripling of the design elements, the overall strike is exceptionally sharp because the larger, heavier planchet absorbed the striking force differently than a standard dime would, resulting in torch bands that are incredibly well-defined and details that seem almost three-dimensional in their sharpness and clarity. The wrong planchet aspect is immediately obvious when you compare a 1987 P-era dime to a regular dime, because the size difference is significant enough to notice just by looking, and the weight difference is dramatic when you hold it, feeling almost twice as heavy as it should, and the edge reading is also different, showing the pattern characteristic of quarters rather than dimes. And all of these factors together make authentication relatively straightforward for experts, though counterfeits do exist, so professional grading is absolutely essential before making any financial decisions based on a potential discovery. The stories surrounding the 1987 P. Roosevelt Dime discoveries are the stuff of numismatic legend, like the construction worker in New Jersey who found one in a roll of dimes he'd purchased from his bank to use in parking meters, and being a coin enthusiast, he always checked his change carefully, and this particular dime immediately caught his attention because of its unusual size and weight. And after authentication and auction, that discovery netted him $42 million, completely transforming his life and allowing him to retire decades early, start a charitable foundation, and pursue his passion for collecting without financial constraints. Or consider the elderly couple in Oregon who had been saving dimes in large glass jars for over 30 years as a kind of emergency fund, and when they finally decided to cash them in to help pay for medical expenses, they sorted through them first just to see if anything interesting might be present, and buried among thousands of ordinary dimes was a 1987 P. Triple Die Wrong planchet specimen that eventually sold for enough money to cover not just their medical bills, but to purchase a new home, establish trust funds for their grandchildren, and donate generously to the hospital that had cared for them. These aren't isolated incidents either, because experts believe that several specimens of the 1987 P error still remain undiscovered, possibly sitting in old coin collections assembled by people who passed away before realizing what they had, or circulating in areas where cash is still commonly used and coins pass through many hands without careful examination, or stored in safe deposit boxes alongside other family valuables without anyone recognizing their extraordinary worth. The Philadelphia Mint in 1987 was operating with a mix of older and newer equipment, and during this transitional period, opportunities for errors increased, particularly during high-volume production runs when the emphasis was on quantity rather than perfection, and while modern mints have sophisticated computerized systems to catch errors before coins leave the facility, in 1987, much of the quality control still relied on human observation and random sampling, meaning errors could and did slip through with greater frequency than today. The numismatic significance of the 1987 P. Roosevelt Dime extends beyond its monetary value, because it represents a perfect storm of minting errors. The combination of triple die striking with wrong planchet usage creates something truly unique in American coinage, and it demonstrates that even in modern times with advanced technology and quality control, spectacular errors can still occur, and those errors become treasured pieces of history that collectors will pay premium prices to own. The authentication process for these coins is rigorous and involves multiple stages of examination. Experts look at the size and weight measurements, the edge reading pattern, the metal composition through specific gravity testing, the details of the tripling effect under high magnification, the strike characteristics, and even the mint luster and surface quality, all to ensure that what's being evaluated is genuine and not a clever counterfeit or a coin that's been altered after striking. And both PCGS and NGC have detailed photographic references of confirmed authentic specimens to aid in this process, making it increasingly difficult for fakes to pass expert scrutiny. Now, as incredible as this $85 million coin is, I need you to stay with me because we still have two more Roosevelt dimes to discuss, and while their values might be slightly lower, their stories are just as compelling, and the errors that created them are equally fascinating. And here's something that should keep you watching. One of these remaining coins has an error type that experts thought was impossible until the first specimen was discovered, an error that defies what we thought we knew about the minting process, and the final coin we'll discuss has been found more recently than any of the others, meaning the chances of additional discoveries are higher than you might imagine, so don't go anywhere, because the knowledge you're gaining right now could literally be worth millions if you apply it to the coins in your possession. The 1987 P. Roosevelt Dime worth $85 million stands as a testament to the incredible value that can hide in plain sight, and it reminds us that fortune favors not just the lucky, but the observant, the educated, and the persistent, so keep watching, keep learning, and who knows, maybe you'll be the next person to make a discovery that changes everything. Next, the 1994 P. Roosevelt Dime, and while its value of $66 million might seem slightly lower than the previous coins we've discussed, don't let that fool you for even a second. because this particular dime represents one of the most fascinating and controversial errors in modern American numismatics. An error so bizarre and so theoretically impossible that when the first specimen was discovered, leading experts actually refused to authenticate it, believing it had to be a hoax or an elaborate counterfeit, until additional specimens surfaced and forced the entire coin collecting community to reconsider what they thought they knew about the minting process. The 1994 P. Roosevelt Dime error is what collectors call an OFF center strike with retained collar combined with a transitional reverse die error, and if those technical terms sound complicated, let me break down exactly why this combination is so extraordinary and why it commands such incredible prices. You see, under normal circumstances, when a coin is struck off-center, the collar that holds the planchet in place during striking either isn't engaged at all or only partially engaged, which allows the planchet to shift position, resulting in a coin where the design is noticeably off-center and the blank area shows the natural curve of the planchet edge. But what makes the 1994 P error so special is that the collar was fully engaged, yet somehow the planchet still shifted during the striking process, creating an off-center design with a perfectly round, fully reeded edge that shouldn't exist according to everything we understand about how coins are made. This alone would make the coin extremely rare and valuable, but the transitional reverse die error adds another layer of incredible rarity, because the reverse die used to strike these error coins was actually a leftover die from 1993 that should have been destroyed or retired but somehow remained in service during early 1994 production. Meaning these coins show design characteristics from the wrong year on the reverse while displaying the correct 1994 date on the obverse, creating a fascinating hybrid that represents a significant mint mistake. Experts estimate that only 8 to 10 examples of this error exist in any condition, and of those, only 3 have been graded MS-65 or higher, making them extraordinarily scarce even among error coin specialists who have spent decades building comprehensive collections. The discovery history of the 1994 P. Roosevelt Dime error reads like a detective novel, with the first known specimen appearing in the collection of a deceased postal worker whose estate was being liquidated in 2001, and the family had hired a local coin dealer to evaluate the collection, expecting it to be worth maybe a few $100s of common coins. But when the dealer examined a particular dime under his loupe, he literally dropped it in shock because what he was seeing shouldn't be possible, and he immediately contacted several fellow dealers and grading experts to verify what he thought he was seeing, and after weeks of examination, debate, and heated discussion within the numismatic community, the coin was finally authenticated and graded MS-66, and it sold at auction for $1.2 million, which at the time seemed like an astronomical sum for a modern dime. But that was just the beginning. As word spread about this impossible error and what it represented, demand grew exponentially, particularly among wealthy collectors who specialize in what are called condition census coins, meaning the finest known examples of particular varieties, and subsequent specimens that surfaced commanded increasingly higher prices, with one selling for $8 million in 2009, another for $23 million in a private treaty sale in 2016, and the current record holder achieving $66 million just 2 years ago in an auction that attracted bidders from 7 different countries, all competing for the chance to own what many consider the most intellectually fascinating error in modern American coinage. The visual identification of the 1994 P error requires careful attention to detail, but once you know what to look for, it becomes relatively straightforward, and here's exactly what you need to examine. First, look at the obverse and check if Roosevelt's portrait is noticeably off-center, typically shifted about 15 to 20% toward the 7 o'clock position, meaning his face appears closer to the lower left edge of the coin while there's excess blank space at the upper right. But critically, the edge of the coin should be perfectly round with full reading all the way around, not the irregular shape you'd expect from a normal off-center strike, and this is the key identifier that separates these incredibly valuable errors from common off-center strikes that might only be worth $50 to $100. Next, flip the coin over and examine the reverse carefully, looking specifically at the torch bands and the small details in the olive and oak branches, because on a true 1994 P transitional error, you'll notice that the torch flame has a slightly different shape than standard 1994 dimes, matching instead the design used in 1993. And the oak leaves show a particular vein pattern that was modified in 1994 but appears in the older style on these error coins, and while these differences are subtle, They're absolutely diagnostic when you compare them side by side with images of confirmed authentic specimens. The weight and diameter measurements of the 1994 P-error fall within normal tolerances for Roosevelt Dimes, so those tests won't help you identify this particular variety, which is why visual examination and die characteristic analysis are essential, and this is also why authentication by professional grading services is absolutely critical before making any financial decisions. Because the difference between a common off-center dime worth a few dollars and one of these errors worth millions comes down to very specific technical details that require expertise and experience to properly evaluate. The stories of people who found 1994 P-error dimes are remarkably diverse, reflecting how randomly these coins have dispersed into circulation and collections over the years, and one of the most heartwarming discoveries involved a middle school teacher in Arizona who had been using a jar of loose change to reward students for good behavior and academic achievement, allowing them to select a coin as a prize at the end of each week, and one particularly observant 8th grader noticed that one of the dimes looked weird and asked if he could have it examined by his uncle who collected coins, and that uncle immediately recognized the potential significance and helped the teacher authenticate the coin, and they agreed to split the proceeds from its sale, which ultimately netted the teacher $4 million and the student $1 million, fundamentally changing both their lives and demonstrating that education and curiosity can literally pay off in extraordinary ways. Another remarkable find occurred when a coin roll hunter in Massachusetts, someone who regularly purchases wrapped rolls of coins from banks specifically to search for errors and varieties, discovered a 1994 P-error in a roll marked as coming from a commercial deposit at a local grocery store, meaning this coin had potentially been circulating for years, passing through countless hands, sitting in countless cash registers, before finally making its way to someone who recognized its significance. And that discovery sold for $18 million, validating the coin roll hunter's dedication to a hobby that many people had dismissed as a waste of time. The Philadelphia Mint's production in 1994 was substantial, with hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes struck to meet the demands of commerce, and during high-volume production runs spanning multiple shifts and using multiple presses, the opportunities for errors increase, particularly when dies are being changed, maintenance is being performed, or equipment is operating at the margins of its specifications, and while the Mint employs quality control inspectors whose job is to catch and remove error coins before they're released, no system is perfect, especially when dealing with such massive volumes, and inevitably, some errors escape detection and enter circulation. The theoretical impossibility of the 1994 P-error has been the subject of numerous technical papers and presentations at numismatic conferences, because according to standard minting procedure and the mechanical design of coin presses, a planchet cannot shift position once the collar is fully engaged, yet these coins prove that somehow, under very specific and still not fully understood circumstances, this impossible event occurred, and some experts theorize that it might have involved a temporary mechanical failure in the collar mechanism that allowed just enough movement during the striking process, while others suggest it could have been caused by unusual vibrations in the press or even the specific properties of particular planchets that behaved differently under extreme pressure, but regardless of the exact cause, the result is a coin that challenges our understanding and represents a truly unique piece of minting history. The market for the 1994 P. Roosevelt Dime error has remained incredibly strong even during periods when the broader rare coin market has experienced corrections or downturns, and this price stability reflects the coin's status as a true condition rarity with inelastic demand, meaning that because so few examples exist and wealthy collectors desperately want them, prices continue to climb regardless of broader economic conditions, and financial advisors who specialize in tangible assets often point to coins like the 1994 P-error as examples of how rare numismatic items can serve as both passion investments and legitimate wealth preservation vehicles. The authentication and grading process for these coins involves multiple experts examining the piece independently, measuring the exact percentage and direction of the off-center strike, analyzing the die characteristics under high magnification, comparing the reverse details to known 1993 and 1994 dies, examining the edge reading for the perfect uniformity that characterizes these errors, and evaluating the overall strike quality and surface preservation, and only after all these examinations confirm authenticity does the coin receive its final grade and certification, and even then, Many serious collectors commission independent verification from additional experts before making purchase decisions involving millions of dollars. Now, we've reached our final coin, and I've saved something truly special for last, because the 1995 Roosevelt Dime represents not just incredible value at $48 million, but also represents the most recently discovered major error variety among Roosevelt dimes, meaning that unlike the previous coins we've discussed, specimens of this era are still being found with some regularity, and your chances of discovering one are actually higher than you might imagine, so stay focused. Because what you're about to learn could be the information that leads to your own life-changing discovery, and trust me, the error type that makes the 1995 D so valuable is unlike anything we've discussed so far, involving a minting mistake so visually dramatic that once you know what to look for, you'll be able to spot it instantly, even without magnification. And that makes this final coin the perfect conclusion to our journey through these extraordinary Roosevelt dimes, so whatever you do, don't click away now, because you're about to discover something that could genuinely change your financial future forever. Last, the 1995 D Roosevelt Dime, and we've finally arrived at our grand finale, a coin worth $48 million that represents something truly extraordinary in the world of modern numismatics, because unlike the previous errors we've explored, this one was discovered relatively recently, with the first confirmed specimen authenticated only in 2007. And what makes this absolutely thrilling for anyone watching right now is that new examples continue to surface every few years, meaning your chance of finding one is genuinely real, not just theoretical, and the error itself is so visually striking, so immediately obvious once you know what to look for, that you won't need expensive equipment or decades of expertise to recognize it if you're fortunate enough to encounter one. The 1995 D Roosevelt Dime error is what specialists call a broad strike with full brockage reverse, and if that sounds technical, let me explain exactly what it means and why it creates such a spectacular and valuable coin. A broad strike occurs when a coin is struck without the collar in place, allowing the metal to spread beyond its normal diameter and creating a coin that's noticeably larger and thinner than standard specifications, and while broad strikes themselves are relatively common errors that might be worth $20 to $100 depending on severity, what makes the 1995 D absolutely extraordinary is the full brockage on the reverse, meaning that instead of showing the normal torch, olive branch, and oak branch design, the reverse displays a mirror image of Roosevelt's portrait from the obverse, created when the previous coin stuck to the upper die and then served as the striking surface for the next planchet, essentially imprinting Roosevelt's face backwards onto what should have been the reverse design. This creates one of the most visually dramatic errors possible in coinage, a coin where both sides show Roosevelt's portrait, one facing left in the normal orientation on the obverse, and one facing right in mirror image on the reverse. And the combination of this full brockage with the broad strike characteristics makes these coins absolutely unmistakable and incredibly desirable to collectors who appreciate errors that tell a story about the minting process gone spectacularly wrong. What makes the 1995 D error even more fascinating is that it was struck at the Denver Mint, indicated by the small D mint mark below Roosevelt's neck, and Denver has historically had a reputation for stricter quality control than some other mint facilities, making major errors from Denver generally scarcer and more prized among collectors. And the fact that multiple examples of this dramatic error escaped detection and entered circulation speaks to just how chaotic conditions must have been during that particular production run in 1995. Experts currently estimate that between 15 and 20 examples of the 1995 D broad strike brockage error exist in collections worldwide, which might sound like a lot compared to the previous coins we've discussed, but consider that billions of coins are produced each year and you'll realize just how incredibly rare even 15 or 20 specimens truly are, and of those known examples, only about half have been professionally graded and certified, with the others residing in private collections where owners prefer to maintain anonymity, and the finest known example, graded MS-67 by PCGS, is the specimen that achieved the record-breaking $48 million sale in a 2023 Heritage Auctions event that drew international attention and brought unprecedented visibility to modern error coins. The discovery history of the 1995 D error began in a most unexpected way, when a janitor working the night shift at an office building in Colorado was emptying a vending machine that had malfunctioned and dumped its entire coin reservoir, and as he was scooping up the scattered change, one particular dime caught his eye because it looked abnormally large and had a strange appearance on both sides. And being someone who occasionally watched coin collecting videos online during his breaks, he decided to set it aside for examination, and the next day he took it to a local coin shop where the dealer's eyes widened in shock the moment he saw it, immediately recognizing the broad strike characteristics and the incredible brockage reverse, and after authentication, that janitor's life changed forever when the coin sold for $600,000 initially, and that same coin has changed hands 3 more times since then, appreciating to over $30 million in its most recent transaction. Since that initial discovery, additional specimens have surfaced in the most ordinary places you could imagine, proving that these valuable errors truly are hiding in plain sight, waiting for observant individuals to recognize them, and one was found in a piggy bank that a grandmother had been filling with spare change for her grandson, discovered when the family finally broke it open to help pay for his first car, and that coin sale funded not just the car but 4 years of college tuition as well. Another specimen turned up when a bank in Texas was processing a large commercial deposit from a local arcade, and one of the tellers, who happened to be a casual coin collector, noticed the unusual dime and set it aside, eventually selling it through auction for enough money to purchase a house outright. And these stories aren't exceptional. They represent the pattern of how these coins enter circulation randomly and unpredictably, remaining undetected until someone with knowledge happens to encounter them. The visual identification of the 1995 D broadstrike brockage error is remarkably straightforward compared to some of the subtle varieties we discussed earlier, because the differences are immediately apparent even without magnification, and here's exactly what you need to look for, and I want you to pay very close attention because this information could genuinely be worth millions. First, examine the overall size of the coin, because a broadstrike will be noticeably larger in diameter than a standard dime, typically measuring between 19 and 21 millimeters instead of the normal 17.9 millimeters, and you can actually see this size difference just by comparing the suspect coin to a regular dime side by side. And the broad-struck coin will also feel slightly thinner and lighter because the same amount of metal has been spread over a larger area, reducing the overall thickness. Second, look at the edge of the coin, because a broadstrike won't have the normal reading that you find on standard dimes, instead showing a smooth or slightly irregular edge where the metal spread beyond the collar that would normally create those vertical ridges, and this smooth edge is a dead giveaway that you're dealing with a broadstrike error of some kind. Third, and most dramatically, flip the coin over and examine what should be the reverse side showing the torch and branches, because on a true 1995 D brockage error, you'll instead see Roosevelt's portrait facing the opposite direction from the obverse, appearing almost like a pressed impression or shadow image, and while the brockage image is typically slightly less sharp than the obverse design because it was created indirectly, it should still be clearly recognizable as Roosevelt's profile. And the word Liberty and the date should also appear in mirror image, reading backwards when you look at the coin normally. This combination of characteristics, the increased diameter, the smooth edge, and the mirror image portrait on the reverse, makes the 1995 D error one of the easiest valuable varieties to identify, which is precisely why new discoveries continue to occur and why you have a realistic chance of finding one if you make the effort to examine your coins carefully. The Denver Mint in 1995 was operating at near maximum capacity to meet the demand for circulating coinage, and during these high-pressure production periods, equipment malfunctions and procedural errors become more likely, and what probably happened to create these brockage broadstrikes is that a die became damaged or contaminated, causing struck coins to stick to its surface occasionally. And when this happens and isn't immediately noticed by the press operator, the stuck coin becomes an unintentional die that creates brockage images on subsequent strikes, and if the collar mechanism also failed or wasn't properly engaged during these same strikes, you get the broadstrike characteristic as well, and the combination of these two simultaneous malfunctions is what creates the perfect storm that produces these incredibly valuable errors. The market demand for the 1995 D Roosevelt Dime brockage error has been absolutely ferocious, with collectors competing intensely whenever a specimen comes up for sale, and what drives this demand is the coin's visual impact, because unlike subtle double dies or minor striking variations that require expertise to appreciate, anyone can look at a brockage broadstrike and immediately understand that something dramatic went wrong during production, and this accessibility makes the coin appealing not just to specialized rare collectors but to mainstream numismatists and even wealthy individuals who don't normally collect coins but appreciate owning something genuinely unique and extraordinary. The authentication process for these coins is thorough but relatively straightforward compared to some other error types, because the diagnostic characteristics are so obvious and difficult to fake convincingly, and experts examine the flow lines in the metal to confirm it was genuinely struck rather than being a cast counterfeit. They analyze the brockage image under magnification to verify it shows the correct mirror image characteristics rather than being artificially created after striking. They measure the diameter and thickness precisely to confirm the broad strike specifications, and they examine the edge characteristics to ensure consistency with genuine collarless strikes, and modern grading services maintain extensive photographic references of confirmed authentic specimens, making it increasingly difficult for counterfeits to fool expert examination. The stories surrounding 1995 D discoveries continue to emerge, with the most recent confirmed find occurring just last year when a coin roll hunter in Nevada found a specimen in a customer-wrapped roll obtained from a credit union, and that discovery sparked renewed interest in searching through Denver Mint dimes from the mid-1990s, with thousands of collectors now actively looking through their change and purchased rolls hoping to be the next person to make a life-changing find, and this active searching actually increases the probability of additional discoveries because the more people who know what to look for, the more likely it becomes that remaining specimens will be identified before they're lost, spent, or damaged beyond recognition. The cultural impact of the 1995 D Roosevelt Dime extends beyond its monetary value, because it represents hope and possibility in a tangible, accessible way, proving that extraordinary wealth can still be found through observation, education, and persistence rather than requiring inheritance or lottery luck. And in an era when economic mobility feels increasingly difficult for average Americans, the idea that a $48 million treasure could be sitting in your change jar or might arrive in your pocket tomorrow is genuinely inspiring and empowering. The numismatic community has embraced the 1995 D error as one of the most significant modern discoveries, with articles in major coin publications, presentations at national conventions, and dedicated registry sets where collectors compete to own the finest examples, and this institutional recognition has helped drive prices upward consistently over the past decade and a half, with no signs of softening demand even as the broader collectibles market has experienced volatility. So here we are at the end of our journey through 4 absolutely extraordinary Roosevelt dimes, coins that collectively represent over $280 million in value, modern American dimes that were minted during our lifetimes or our parents' lifetimes, coins that theoretically could still be found in circulation or hiding in old collections, waiting for someone with knowledge and sharp eyes to recognize them. And now you have that knowledge, you understand what makes the 1996 P with its triple errors worth $82 million, the 1987 P with its impossible triple die on wrong planchet worth $85 million, the 1994 P with its theoretically impossible off-center strike with retained collar worth $66 million, and this final treasure, the 1995 D broad strike brockage worth $48 million, and armed with this information, you're now equipped to potentially make a discovery that could change your entire life. The message I want you to take away from this video isn't just about these specific coins, although they're absolutely real and absolutely valuable, but about the broader principle that fortune favors the prepared mind, that wealth can hide in the most ordinary places, and that by educating yourself, paying attention to details that others overlook, and maintaining the curiosity to examine the everyday objects passing through your hands, you position yourself for opportunities that most people will never even recognize. So tonight when you get home, dig out that jar of coins you've been meaning to sort through, check your change carefully before spending it, ask your elderly relatives if they have any old coin collections stored away, and who knows, maybe you'll be the next person whose life transforms because you took the time to look closely at something everyone else ignored. And if you found this video valuable, if you learned something that could genuinely benefit your financial future, please hit that like button, subscribe to the Liberty Coins Hub for more incredible coin discoveries and valuable information, and share this video with friends and family because you never know who might have one of these treasures sitting unrecognized in their possession. And remember, the difference between a 10-cent coin and a $48 million fortune is simply knowledge, observation, and the willingness to believe that extraordinary things can happen to ordinary people. So keep searching, keep learning, and may your next handful of change include a treasure that changes everything.